the lateness in appointment, sometimes because of the traffic jam, and because of one reason or the other, wanting to meet up on time. And then the other aspect is also because the motorcyclists get more money when they go to risky places, because they know that this is against the law, so they charge most times because for the risks being taken. So they see it as economically viable for them. So having stated most of the reason why these things are done, of course, some of them to use the motorcycle for criminal activities because it aids criminality in a faster means. Again, why do I have to sympathize with them? For some, it's their means of livelihood. Some have families. Some, that's the only way they can survive.
Yeah. But before you start sympathizing with them, let's look at, you've talked about the reason, because my first question was, why the increase?
Yeah.
And you have pointed out some possible reasons, right? So let's also look at how exactly, what about these reasons being sorted out? You talked about the traffic situation. What about looking at the alternative routes? Because these places could be alternative routes, but the main route, what about looking at it and trying to curb some of those problems that make these motorcyclists, take another route and then, going down to the places where they are not supposed to go according to the law?
That's part of established that sometimes is the shortcuts.
That's what I'm saying.
I will use
what
word.
about the government stepping in?
Well, government will tell you that work is in progress to ensure that traffic is reduced in Lagos. Of course, they are trying their best. But again, if government have a reason for restricting Okada,
yes, in those areas,
in some of these areas, which is also ideal. So I only feel that if government have reasons for restricting motorcyclists, that's popularly known as Okada, in some areas of the states, the reasons should be, acceptable to the motorcyclists, and you can, restrict yourself within that area that you think is lawful to carry out your business.
Sometimes we just have this thing with breaking laws.
Yes, of course. Again, most of these laws are even initiated by some who are working relatively with some of the security operatives, because they believe that as a security operative, you will not be liable. In fact, who are to enforce this law? Your colleagues. So seeing you trying to use the motorcycle, maybe you use it to come to work or thereabout.
Okay.
So when they are not on uniform, because they are security operatives, other users of the motorcycle, we tend to feel that, some people are even using a motorcycle on these areas, not knowing that they are security operatives. So I feel that the law enforcers should not break the law, because unknown to them, they may be encouraging others to break the law. So if it is clearly stated that motorcycle or motorcyclists should not apply that road, it is not restricted alone, I don't think, for commercial motorcyclists. So unless the law says commercial motorcyclists,
they talk about commercial motorcycles.
So if the law exempts those private users, if we use that word, then there should be a kind of identification, not by ID card, wearing something that the layman will see from afar, that these ones are the private motorcyclists. But of course, you know, in Nigeria, we know how to beat corners.
That's the question I
Now,
asked earlier. What is our problem with breaking the law in this part of the world?
Those who have that tag as private private motorcycle users will end up now be carrying passengers because they have now gotten the license to apply that road. So I think if they are barring motorcycle users, nobody should use that road on motorcycle.
So you're telling the residents of that area not to have motorcycles?
No.
That's exactly
we
what
are
it looks like.
talking about why the usage of motorcycle in areas where government have restricted or banned motorcycle users. Now, I try to go further. I've given instances why these guys do what they do. But I also now said that most times they see others applying that.
So you're saying private users should also be banned in those areas?
If the law must be effective.
Okay.
But if the law will not be made very effective, you can restrict commercial motorcyclists and then license private users.
Okay.
But my own challenge is if it will not be abused, because the private motorcyclists, you end up seeing them carrying passengers.
Okay. But obviously the law is being enforced, because look at the story today. They're talking about the vehicles, the motorcycles that have been seized. And this is not the first time. In fact, we've been hearing, when you talk about some of the laws that are being placed in places like Lagos, you find out that we keep hearing implementations. But then let's go to primary schools now. That's education. There are reports that the primary school teachers in the Federal Capital Territory, the FCT, have suspended their 20-day strike, which began on 18 September 2024. The strike, which led to the closure of schools across the FCT, was called off after a meeting between the Nigeria Union of Teachers, NUT, and the FCT minister, Nyesom Wike. The suspension follows Wike's commitment to pay the remaining 25-month minimum wage arrears, one of the teachers' key demands. Now, the union had previously down tools due to unmet salary arrears and allowances owed to the teachers in the 6 local councils. Further negotiations are expected to address additional demands, including salary increase and implementation of agreed templates for teachers' entitlements. Now, it saddens my heart that the primary school children have also understood or have been part of strike, because it's usually about the tertiary institution, ASU, and the government and all of that. But now primary school children had to stay back at home. When I saw this story, the first question that came to mind is, what is going on with our educational system? I'm not taking away the fact that, or the ending part of the story that said, oh, the Nyesom Wike has actually spoken to them. But I'm looking at the effect that strikes could have on the children. Ambassador, let's get your thoughts on the story.
Well, one, there is no way we will celebrate out-of-school children in the name of strike. Sit-at-home children in the name of strike. Whatsoever reason it is condemnable. But I also like to commend the
FCT
NUT, the FCT NUT, as the teachers union, and then the FCT minister for understanding the power of dialogue. And then again, I also want to believe that the period of time that I think I will commend the FCT minister more when we see and hear the implementations of these promises made to the teachers of FCT. 6 area councils are too small not to be given desired attention or to be able to keep to promises made to them since how many months or years. I do not know the period under review. So what I want to say that the patience for about 20 days of the FCT authority in handling this issue, I want to believe that if the FCT minister comes up and implement these promises, I will commend him more, because why? I will feel that he was not in a hurry to meet and make promises that will not be kept. Unlike some government leaders or appointees or whatsoever, that because you want just situation to temporarily come to an end, you give it a political solution just to deceive the people you are promising. So I would want to commend him more if what he has promised these teachers is kept. Then I will see him again as one leader that do not just make fake promises, because 20 days is enough for a government to study their cash flow. How can we accommodate these promises? How can we implement these promises if we make them? How do we meet the demands of these our teachers? So I think I will wait, and Nigerians will be waiting to see the implementation of these promises.
But then let's look at education as a whole in Nigeria. Like I said earlier, implementing, or let's look at the attention that we're even placing on the educational sector. ASU has been clamoring for strike, NUT now 20 days, and the thing is, after the strike we then had negotiations, or during the strike we then had negotiations. What happened to just making sure that these things are handled? What happened to paying the much needed attention to education even from the start, without waiting for teachers to take to the streets before the right things are being done? How much attention are we really placing on education in Nigeria? Where's our educational sector going?
Well, it's not only in education.
But let's look at education.
Now, I will focus on education. But the kind of leaders and country we have tend to see is a country and leaders where if you do not have the capacity for violence, if you do not have a threat to breach of peace and order, you will not be given attention. When you conduct yourself in a lawful, and very humble manner,
you won't be given attention.
That's the bad aspect of some of our leaders, and that's why situations tend to lead to crisis. It tends to lead to violence, tend to lead to obstruction in what should not be obstructed. So I want to believe that the NUT may have written the leadership of the FCT administration, and probably no attention was given to it.
That's the problem, yes, that I'm looking at
most
lack of attention, or enough
that's
attention.
What I'm saying. The lack of attention probably is because they feel that their letter means nothing. Their request means nothing. And sometimes some people in government feel that we know how to handle them. And it is when what they know fails, that's when they now come to terms of discussion.
Talks about education being the life wire and all of that. Let's look at the effect that all of these in-season strike has been having on our educational sector. We're not just looking at tertiary institution and the students now. Education in Nigeria.
Education in Nigeria is not valued in two ways. Both the managers of the education and those who supervises the educational system in Nigeria. Because one, you hear me always talk about content. Number two, you also see the failures of the government in trying to empower and strengthen the educational system. So that's why I said, generally in Nigeria, educational system is not valued.
How did we even get here? Because I know that there was a time when there was so much value placed on education in Nigeria. In fact, then it seemed like if you don't go to school, your life is, you know the way they used to teach the primary school children those songs then. Like if you don't go to school, your life is going to end and all of those things. It won't go right. So how did we even get it wrong?
There is a need for intentional review of our educational system, our curricula or curriculum, as the case may be. One, when education started in Nigeria, if we use Nigeria as a case study, the British structured the educational system to be an industry that will take over the civil service job. So people are being trained. When you graduate from school, you find yourself working in the civil service because there was low manpower.
Okay.
You see the motivation there. Now there is no more jobs, enough job opportunities in the civil service anymore.
Even though there's still reports of low manpower there.
Even if you have 1 million space, you still have over 80 million jobless Nigerians that the Civil Service Commission cannot engage.
That's just a rough estimate anyway.
Assumptuously, because we have a population about 200 and something million about. So the question is, how many are meaningfully engaged? If they are properly engaged, you will not be seeing jobless people. You will not be seeing hunger in the land. So I want to believe that our educational system now needs to be reviewed.
But don't we have more people who, you said it's cost there not being enough vacancies to accommodate everybody in the civil service. But now, unlike we had it in the past, we have more people who are into businesses.
No, let me
that are employing.
No, let me come. You see, we are talking about the effects.
Yes.
There is low motivation among graduates because we have a lot of graduates who are not meaningfully engaged. So the ones who are in school and yet to get into school do not see the morale, do not see the encouragement to even value the school system. Now, the time where the issue of success is, and prosperity, we need teachers now who are, you see, a teacher of business studies who have never run one business before, who does not know what it takes to establish or run a business. Theory is, you cannot give what you don't have. I've always shared with us an atom because I want to pass a test, and I do not know what an atom physically.
That's
back then, there was self-motivation that if I graduate, I will get a job in my area of specialization, and I'm going to succeed. But right now, you need encouragement from someone. Just like in the case of Robert Kiyosaki and